of marriage, Brahma, or Rajasika marriage, is now current. Other kinds of marriage, by love, by exchange of garlands, or by kidnapping the bride, are now forbidden in this Kali age. Formerly, Kshatriyas would, at their pleasure, kidnap a princess from another royal house, and there would be a fight between the Kshatriya and the girl's family. Then, if the kidnapper was the winner, the girl would be offered to him for marriage. Even Krishna married Rukmini by that process, and some of his sons and grandsons also married by kidnapping. Krishna's grandsons, I think it's grandson, really. Krishna's grandson kidnapped Duryodhana's daughter, which caused a fight between the Kuru and Yadu families. Afterward, an adjustment was made by the elderly members of the Kuru family. Such marriages were current in bygone ages, but at the present moment they're impossible because the strict principles of Kshatriya life have practically been abolished. Since India has become dependent on foreign countries, the particular influences of her social orders have been lost. Now, according to the scriptures, everyone is a Sudra. The so-called Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas have forgotten their traditional activities, and in the absence of these activities, they're called Sudras. It is mentioned in the scriptures, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. In the age of Kali, everyone will be like Sudras. The traditional social customs are not followed in this age, although formerly they were followed strictly. Kamasabhuya naradevate syat putriya samannaya vidopratita kaevate tanaya nadriyeta svayaiva kantya kshipatim iva shriyam. Let your daughter's desire for marriage, which is recognized in the Vedic scriptures, be fulfilled. Who would not accept her hand? She is so beautiful that by her bodily luster alone, she excels the beauty of her ornaments. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanandane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarane Vajkapaturavyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes, so this is Karadama addressing Swayambhuva Manu. And well, you're familiar with the background, I'm sure. Very interesting story how Karadama had been strictly practicing some sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a hybrid process of Ashtanga yoga with severe austerities, but with some bhakti involved also. And he'd been doing that, if I remember correctly, for 10,000 years. That's quite a while. Yeah, really. And, with extreme austerity. But still, the desire, like material desire, you could say, was still present in his heart, and to the point where he recognized, I have to do something about this. I can't just carry on celibate or trying to be celibate. I have to actually, acknowledge the material side of my nature and marry. But not just marry anyone, the first member of the opposite sex who walks by or whatever, but really in a very nice way, as Prabhupada says, in the recognized manner of marriage prescribed in the scriptures. He wanted to marry. And so anyway, it's happening. It's happening right here. Swayambhuva Manu is aware of Karadama, who is Karadama, what is Karadama in terms of his advancement and what he's been doing, his austerities and saintliness like that. So he's brought his daughter Devahuti there. And it's very interesting, and it's very important also that someone like Karadama Muni has been practicing these things, as I recall, for 10,000 years. Anyway, it was for a long time. And there was Krishna consciousness there too. He was not an impersonalist, although the process was not like, really just full-on devotional service, that sort of thing. But it was kind of like a mixed process, you could say. So anyway, after so long and really trying his best, just really trying his best, he was forced to recognize that I have these types of material desires, or this type of material desire, which I have been, ignoring or just not giving into for such a long time. But it's still there, sort of nagging. So I have to accept it and act on it in the way which is, as Prabhupada says, the recognized manner prescribed in the scriptures. Srila Prabhupada, in the early days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada really encouraged the young men to remain brahmacharis. He really did. And he made all sorts of different points about it. One classic point he made, which was often quoted back in those days, is that a householder, a householder has 25% less, has only 25% of the chance of going back to Godhead in this lifetime of a strict brahmachari. And this was a mantra in the days when, brahmachari life was really such a big thing, just all over within ISKCON. So, but in due course of time, devotees found that they couldn't manage it, or at least, shall we say, they couldn't manage it happily. And maybe they could sort of hang in there and sort of hold on and something like that, but really to do it, remain celibate happily, it was, they were just too uncomfortable, if not falling down and all that sort of thing, but at least too much uncomfortable trying to maintain that position. And so they got married, and in this way the temples, which were full of brahmacharis, emptied out. And, so many temples with deities, they ended up battling to maintain the standard of deity worship that they'd had, until, generally, those brahmacharis who are now householders and their wives came to the point where they were able to maintain themselves and come and do service in the temple, particularly worshipping the deities. And, they could do like that. So it's sort of almost like a full circle type of thing. So, it's a very important point for brahmacharis and just for young people, young men, and young ladies also. Am I happy actually in a celibate position, or am I not really happy? Is it really like a struggle for me? And a difficult struggle. So anyway, this is the point Cardano came to. Even though he'd been doing so many austerities, and it's not that, at least at this point, it's not that he now adopted some form of, certainly not luxurious lifestyle by any means. He was still living a super austere way of life, and he continued doing that when he was married. Anyway, Kadama is special compared at least to us. Yeah. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada in the purport there talks about the first class process: call the bridegroom to the home of the bride, hand her to him in charity with a dowry of valuable things. When it was Kshatriyas, particularly like royalty, there'd be some elephants handed over, and horses and maid servants, and a whole, even dozens of animals and other people, particularly ladies, handed over. And that was considered sort of not just respectable, but pious in the religious sense, beneficial. If the father could do this, hand his daughter over in that way, it was considered, or not just considered, it was, according to Shastra, very beneficial for him in terms of good karma, etc., like that. Great religious merit, Srila Prabhupada says. Yes, so anyway, apparently some of them still do. Just not long ago, what was it? I don't know if it was a year ago or something. You may have seen in the news, one son of one of the most wealthy, if maybe the most wealthy families in India. Was it Ambani, that family? Ambani, I think they're the wealthiest. They have a house in Mumbai, which is something like, it's one thing to have a double-story house. To have a 3-story house, that's quite unusual. 4 stories, sure, what happened? Their house, I don't know, is it 50 stories, or it's some fantastic number like that, just kind of ridiculous number actually. And he, the young man, got married to some young woman, but it wasn't sort of a pious religious affair. It was just some sort of grandiose, materialistic, show-off type of situation. But in the good old days, things were done differently. Yes. And Prabhupada mentions there are 8 forms of marriage mentioned in Manusmriti or Manusmrita. But nowadays, only one of them is Brahma or Rajasic marriage is current, which means what Prabhupada describes. Ornaments, gold, furniture, the household paraphernalia. In the past it would have meant, amongst the the real royalty, probably a few elephants and horses and so on. I was reading a few years ago about, Guruvayur. The Guruvayur temple, they still keep elephants. But the problem is, to maintain an elephant is very costly. And at least that report said, which I read, it costs something like $1 million a year to maintain an elephant. But I don't know. Anyway, I know it's expensive because in Mayapur we have elephants too. I don't know about $1 million a year, but definitely very expensive. Yes, right. So, but previously, Prabhupada mentions, particularly amongst the Kshatriyas, the type of marriage, it's called Rakshasic, interesting name, was not uncommon. And Prabhupada mentions at least 2 examples from Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna kidnapped Duryodhana, and, well, Prabhupada sort of leading into it would say, formerly Kshatriyas would, at their pleasure, kidnap a princess from another royal house, and there'd be a fight between the Kshatriya and the girl's family. Then if the kidnapper was the winner, the girl would be offered to him for marriage. If the kidnapper was the loser, he would be cremated because, losing meant he'd be killed, because they'd have a fight. It was not just sort of fisticuffs or wrestling or something of that sort. It was the real thing, with weapons. And Kshatriya culture being what it is, if you lose and they don't kill you, it's considered a great insult. That they don't take you seriously. If they took you seriously, they'd kill you. But if they let you go, then, it's like they think, who's this fellow? He's useless. And the story, Prabhupada tells the story about some king who went out to fight back in those days sometime. And he was defeated, but the enemy didn't kill him. So he went home to his palace and found the front door locked from the inside. And he knocked on the door and shouted out, and his wife came, to the top, overlooking the front door, and said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm, your husband, such and such." And she said, "No, you're not. You're not my husband." And she said, "You were defeated in the battle, we heard, but they didn't kill you, him. Well, if they didn't kill you, then, you're useless. So you're not my husband." And that was it. What do you think? Interesting approach. Yeah, so she got on his case for not being killed. If you were a real Kshatriya, then they would not have let you go. They would have killed you. And, it would have been very honorable for me, for the wife, the widow, if my husband was killed in battle. It's like, her position then is very respectable. Respectable for a while, until the husband's body's cremated, when she would walk into the fire and sit down and Haribol. See you in your next lifetime. So, in the good old days, my gosh. Anyway, the good news is, devotees, I mean, part of the good news is we are not Kshatriyas. Because anyone, I mean, according to this, anyone who is a Kshatriya and wants to get married, they have to go through some version at least of this procedure. And it may end up in a fight with the prospective wife's brothers or her father or somebody, and you might well be killed. This was just normal. And it was not, if someone in that sort of situation was killed, then it was not like a matter of lamentation, oh, he got killed. It was considered, yeah, good, he was a good man. He was a good man, and the wedding would go on, and some mention would be made of him. He was a good man, and he got killed in the whole process, and Haribol. And then Krishna's grandson, was it Aniruddha, was it? Was it Samba? Kidnapped, I can't remember her name, what's her name? But anyway. Lakshmana. Yeah, and got caught. And eventually the Yadus came, and there was a battle, and they defeated Duryodhana's family, and then, as Prabhupada says, an adjustment was made. Yeah, so such marriages were current in bygone ages, but at the present moment they're impossible, because the strict principles of Kshatriya life have practically been abolished. Yes. Kalo Sutra Sambhava, the famous verse, or like sutra from Shastra, Kalo in Kali Yuga, Sambhava means like nature. Nature. Everyone has the nature of a sutra. That's, their sort of their inclinations and tendencies and all that. They're Sudra-like. Of course, there's another one, which is also a very interesting little sutra. Janmana Jayate Sudra. By birth, everyone is a Sudra. Because even a child born in a Kshatriya family or Brahmin family, children are children. And it's only later on, as they get a little older at least, just a little older, that some deeper nature of being a Brahmin or a Kshatriya would start coming out. Otherwise, when children come out of the womb, they are hopeless. They cannot maintain themselves. Yeah, they have to be fed, they have to be clothed, and all these types of things. Otherwise, if they're not taken care of, they won't survive. But then a little later, if there really is by karma, some sort of deeper Brahminical or Kshatriya or Vaishya nature starts coming out, then those inclinations starts showing themselves, but from the very outset. Janmana Jayate Sudra. Yeah. Yes, so Hare Krishna, so Kaudama though, well, Devahuti, the whole situation is very amazing actually, and I know it gets discussed quite a bit through all these verses connected with, leading up to them getting married, and then they get married, that Swayambhuva Manu, he is the Manu. He is the Manu. And so he's a a type of incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Manvantara avatar. Usually speaking, they are jivas, but not always actually, but oftentimes they're jiva souls, like the Shaktivesh avatars are generally jivas, although not always. So Swayambhuva, he is a very big man. He's not just a Kshatriya, and he's not just one of the sort of big Kshatriya families. He is the topmost, basically, pretty much. He's a Manu, the head of humanity. And his daughter, well, he already had, but anyway, this particular daughter, Devahuti, she is just like as qualified as a young woman practically could possibly be in terms of how she's been, just of her sort of her nature, psychophysical nature, and her upbringing. Really talk about being in a devotee family. Yeah, she's really been brought up. And so she is, well, as Kardama says, who would not accept her hand? No one would refuse. No Kshatriya. They would consider it, if they were selected to marry the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, they'd think, wow, this is really a great recognition of me. Some of the other daughters, who were they married to? Was it Daksha? Or, I can't remember offhand. But there are other daughters who were given to other great personalities. So it's very interesting that Swayambhuva Manu hands his daughter, this amazing young lady, over to Kardama, who, if you look at him, he looks like, well, I don't know what you'd say. Of course, he's sort of effulgent due to his austerities, but dreadlocks and just living with nothing, like living under a tree and eating just, roots and fruits that were just there, and no residence. And now Swayambhuva is handing his daughter over to him. In the Bollywood movies, not that I've watched many, if any, but one of the main themes, you probably know, do you, from the old days?
Yes.
Yeah, the girl, or maybe the boy, wants to marry the girl from the richer family. And so the family don't want them to get married. And they have to struggle. And, in the end, true love wins out. And her parents surrender and they get married. Isn't that one of the formulas? I'm sure it's one of the formulas. Formulae.
All the movies.
Oh, yeah. A staple. And of course, at various points during the movie, maybe they're out in sort of a park getting together, and suddenly this music starts playing, and dancing girls and dancing boys come from behind every tree, and suddenly it's all happening, choreographed with orchestral music from nowhere. Anyway, it all ends up with them getting married. I mean, does it ever not? Does it ever end up some other way? Maybe. Yeah. So, yes. But now in this case, if anyone from the material point of view looked like he was not a candidate for marrying a high-level family's daughter, I mean, in a sense you could say it would be Karadama Muni, at least from the material point of view, but it's not working on the material basis. It's working actually on a transcendental basis and a shastric basis. Yes. So anyway, these things are going on. And we'll see the next verse talks about her beauty. Incredible. Incredible beauty. You know how Krishna is so beautiful, sometimes people would faint when they saw him. Same thing happened with Devahuti. Yeah. Some people would faint when they saw her because of her beauty. I mean, we cannot imagine, really. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Any comments or questions? Prabhuji.
Unfortunately, it's like a social development question. As you were speaking, majority of the time when I preach, it's usually concerning relationships. It can be young men and young women. They usually have this concern in their lives.
Right.
Even within children of devotees as well.
Sure.
For example, one devotee girl she goes to a normal school and she revealed, okay, she's interested in dating or something like this.
Right.
So I was just wondering, I guess how would you advise such a devotee in those terms without freaking them out or making, without being...
Well, that's the thing, that's the thing. We have to deal with people in ways, we have to try, pray to the Lord to give us the intelligence to deal with people in terms they'll be able to relate to and sort of utilize advice they can actually utilize in ways which they feel they can utilize it. Otherwise, we become regarded and sort of, in a sense, correctly or accurately, as being sort of irrelevant. It's just not relevant. Relevant means real.
Yes.
It's just not real. And why give people just advice which is not going to be real for them? So if it's a matter of dating, then you'd probably have to say that, if you really have to date, you could, at least try and date a devotee, or, if they're sort of flexible enough that, at least let your parents know and, see what they think, and if they're not happy, then, try to just sort of ease off on that one. How about when the daughter is interested in a Muslim boy? Sure. Because that's the end, basically. I mean, at least with Indian Muslims or,
Yeah.
so if it was Russia, it's completely different. The Muslims become devotees and their families are happy. But anyway, we're talking about different people. So you'd have to, otherwise if you say, no, just tell your parents, ask your parents, can you please find me a nice boy? And if they think, come on, I can't do that. Because sometimes, the dear parents, God bless them, they don't make very good choices. And some of these girls, they know that. Yeah, if I just leave it up to my parents and sort of close my eyes and just say, right, whatever, whoever you choose, then it happens that the marriages happen. I mean, there's so many that happen under those types of circumstances that either the boy or the girl, they're not really happy. Even in Prabhupada's case. Yeah. So, of course, Prabhupada's Prabhupada. And, I mean, you could say he was more in the culture than people are nowadays, which, is true. But, his father, who was a great devotee, when Prabhupada wanted to take a second wife, Prabhupada's father told him, actually, it's good if you're not too much attracted to your wife. Because if you're too much attracted, then, you just get caught up. And worse than caught up, you get degraded. So it's very sensitive. And one has to, particularly if one is dealing with that sort of person on a fairly regular basis, you've got to really think about it and discuss it with others who are preaching under similar circumstances. And get some input, because I'm sure there are some who have, interesting insights in how to address things and encourage the girl or the boy who's been brought up as a devotee to maintain Krishna consciousness and not really get sidetracked. I know this one girl, daughter of a disciple of mine from Chatsworth, who just got entangled with a Muslim boy and is married to him and is living, as a Muslim. But we gave her a devotee name and she was really happy just before they were married. And she's still partially a devotee, in the sense that she chants sometimes, comes to the temple, but she has to eat beef, and cook it, because the Muslims are tough. If you want to marry a Muslim, you've got to become a Muslim, generally speaking, and then everything goes down the drain. Those thoughts on the subject. But it's not good to be irrelevant for the sake of, strict Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was flexible. There was one girl I know when I joined, 73, and a British girl, white girl, and she was married already and had to cook meat. And she asked Prabhupada in Bhaktivedanta Manna, should I just refuse or something like that? And Prabhupada told her, no, you carry on and you cook for him, but you keep chanting and, being a devotee. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Brahmaji is Swayambhu, man of pure devotee.
well, he's an incarnation of God, so it must be something pretty close to him. But I would say yes, because he is a great devotee, very great devotee. Yeah. And a type of incarnation. It's a little different from, like the Leela avatars and those types of Yuga avatars. But still he's counted as an incarnation. And Swayambhuva, he's one of the Mahajans. Yeah. So, he must be a pure devotee. Hare Krishna. Any comments, questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Raj, how does one understand which material desires should be tolerated, and through the practice of bhakti they will be overcome, and which ones should be engaged in a pious way?
Well, in a broad sense, one needs a little intelligence that has to be there. So one will have to pray for some intelligence. But the thing is, if there's a desire or some desires which are actually contrary to the regulative principles, like really contrary, then, really speaking, one should try and tolerate them. Yeah. One should really do one's best to tolerate them. In the case of this particular sort of the classic material desire of attraction to the opposite sex, then, a young man who's living celibate, but, as is the case for everyone, encountering these desires on a regular basis, something like that, then it's really a question, first of all, to actually remain brahmachari as such, or brahmacharini, one can say, would mean living in a temple, pretty much. As soon as they're living outside and working, then, even if they dress in saffron, the young men, it's not really, Prabhupada didn't accept that. In fact, Prabhupada specifically said, in the very early days, if someone wants to be a brahmachari, they must live in a temple. Otherwise, if you live outside and, like that, then you should wear white. Yes. But anyway, so now if we're talking about those who are living in temples and living a celibate life, but, struggling to one degree or another with that particular material desire, then it's really a matter of, can I tolerate the material desire? I mentioned earlier, happily, without it being, sort of like being haunted by an aggressive ghost, that sort of thing. If it reaches the point where, it's just such a thing, then better to become a Krishna-conscious grihastha and locate, or maybe with the help of others, it depends, a young lady who's really a devotee and a Krishna-conscious person. This idea of the young male devotee who wants to get married, meeting a non-devotee young lady and thinking, well, I'll marry her and make her into a devotee. My experience with people who've done that is that it doesn't work very often, because the young lady is not a devotee for particular reasons. She has her reasons for not being a devotee. I mean, some can become transformed and some do, but from my, observing people, it's not common that the non-devotee young lady or non-devotee man becomes a devotee. And, they should marry someone who's kind of like-minded in Krishna consciousness, so they can actually share in Krishna consciousness like that, have similar interests in terms of service, and so on. Yeah, and then, it can be greatly beneficial, and we see it. We see it. Although, having said that, many householders, they may not say it, but they do experience difficulty within their married life. And I think any who say they don't, I think they're not telling the truth. Yeah. But at least they're sort of, you could say, noble difficulties, as opposed to sort of just falling down and just, becoming degraded. How does that sound? Hare Krishna.